Well, hello, and welcome to another edition of From the Woods Today. I'm Renee Williams, and I'm here with my co-host, Billy Thomas, and we both work at the University of Kentucky in the Forestry and Natural Resources and the Extension. And we really appreciate you being here today, and we have another great show lined up for you.
Yeah, I'm really excited about today's show. We know you all could be doing some other things, but we're really thankful that you're with us today. We're going to have Dr. Jacob Muller on with a new series that he's just getting started called InTreegued. It's a very intriguing title, so we'll check that out. And then we have Laurie Thomas back with our ever popular tree of the week, a pretty cool tree that she's going to be talking about. Really cool. And I'll save the announcement and let her do that. And then we have Dr. Ellen Crocker going to be talking about some of those pesky plants we have to deal with. So another great show again. We're glad to have you all with us. You can interact with us via the chat pod in Zoom, or if you're viewing via Facebook Live, please use the comment section. But we're delighted to have you with us today.
Yeah, so let's get started. Dr. Muller, there you are. Hi.
Hey, Jacob.
Hey, everyone.
So tell us a little bit about what's your segment is today.
Sure. So this is a new series, as Billy mentioned, and really I thought it'd be fun to just kind of explore why forests are so special to us, in particular those of us that work in the forests and in forestry, and why we do what we do, and why many of us are so passionate about it. And the idea was that we could share these stories through the lens of the camera, and hopefully inspire you, whether you're a woodland owner or somebody who has thought about managing your forests, or just even to get inspired just to go out and enjoy being in the forest and kind of reconnecting with nature. And so the first video today is just it's just me, and I'll be kind of laying out the vision for this series, and then we'll come back next time and we'll have our first guest on the show. So that's
all right.
all I got.
Well, I'm looking forward to it, Jacob. I appreciate it. I know I'll remind folks that Jacob also has his Forestry 101 series that you did, 7-part series there that you can find on our website. So please check that out as you're waiting for these episodes of Intrigue to drop. So exactly. I guess, Renee.
All right, let's go ahead and watch Intrigued.
I want to welcome you to Intrigued. I'm so happy that you're joining us as we embark on this new adventure to discover and rediscover what makes forests and woodlands so special to us, and why those who have dedicated their lives to working in these natural systems are so passionate about trees and about forests and their long-term sustainability and presence on the landscape. So every month, we're going to speak with a forest practitioner, forest manager, forest researcher or scientist, or a forest supervisor or director, and we're going to hear directly from them. Our goal is to help you learn more about forests from those that are working in it day in and day out, to hear their stories, their passions, their challenges, as we, as a species and as a society, transition into uncharted waters with the effects of climate change and changing environmental conditions being realized, with forest health problems and larger disturbances and an overall lack of management on our forests that create challenges to those that are working in the forest. But this series isn't going to be all doom and gloom. Right? It's going to be what gets you excited about forestry, right? What sparks that curiosity, and why you want to share that with others. The importance of our forests can't be underestimated. We depend on forests for so many things. Besides providing habitat for wildlife and livelihoods for humans, forests protect our water, they prevent soil erosion, they capture carbon dioxide, and produce oxygen. Yet despite our dependence on forests, we tend to take them for granted, underestimating how indispensable they are for every one of us. And so we allow them to deteriorate, lose their natural functions, become infected, or overpowered by invasive plants. But today I want to ask you, how have forests affected your life? Right? We know that forests provide us with so many things, from the shelter that we live in, our houses, our livelihoods, water, food, and even fuel security. All of these activities, these resources, directly or indirectly involve the forests. So if you ever just stop and look around your house or your office, you'll see forest products are a vital part of our way of life. And yet our forests across the country are facing serious challenges. We can't neglect the fact that there are a lot of forest health challenges that we face, again, from those insects and diseases and wildfires. And so, as managers, it's so important that we understand those challenges. We might not like to dwell on them all the time, but to understand them so that we can respond appropriately and hopefully build in some forest health and function into that ecosystem. Because these forest ecosystem, these services provide critical functions for our own welfare. Right? They absorb greenhouse gases. In the tropical forests alone, 250 billion tons of carbon is stored above and below ground in the biomass of these forests and of the trees. They provide clean water for drinking, for bathing, and other household needs. Right? As we mentioned before, they slow the erosion by absorbing water, retaining water in the forest so that it's not releasing directly into the water systems and taking with it sediment and other chemicals that could be harmful to our water systems. Forests serve as a natural buffer to natural disasters, from large episodic precipitation events to flooding. Forests are able to help trap some of that water from directly running off into our water systems. As we know, forests provide so much habitat for wildlife. Here in Kentucky, our forests and woodland systems are so important. There are over 120 native tree species here in Kentucky, thousands of other plants and animals and even microorganisms found here in Kentucky. The geography and climate of Kentucky is well suited to host a range of species and meet their diverse needs. And lastly, Kentucky's backdrop is beautiful. We all know that. It provides this scenic backdrop for so many opportunities related to tourism, for recreation such as hiking and camping, wildlife viewing, hunting and fishing opportunities. A healthy forest system is critical to be able to support all of those activities and enhance those activities in the overall enjoyment of forest users such as ourselves. So for me personally, I work in forestry because I care deeply about the overall health of the forest, of the function of the forest, and I want to discover new ways to better manage our systems, and not only discover those, but to be able to share those with landowners, with forest practitioners, to help others manage their forests as well, or better manage their forests. as I mentioned, we tend to take our forests for granted, right? These are invaluable resources. And the more time we spend in these, the more interaction and engagement we have with the forest, it's going to continue to spark more curiosity into the function of the system. We're going to learn how to better manage it, and we're going to become more and more passionate about the efforts that we take to promote the long-term sustainability. And so I'm really excited that you're going to be joining me on this adventure as we meet and have conversations with a whole suite of wonderful folks who work in the forest and hear about their passions, what sparks their curiosity, what intrigues them the most about working in these systems. And the goal is that you'll take some of these stories, these insights, and you'll take them with you, and hopefully that will spark your own curiosity so that you'll get out in the forest and start to look around and realize that this is an important system that functions because of all of these parts working together to help us in our own welfare as a species and as a society. And so again, thanks for joining me, and I can't wait to take you along on this adventure.
Well, Jacob, thank you for sharing that with us, and that was definitely intriguing.
Hey, you stole my line, Renee.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That was
I don't know
good,
if it was-
Jacob. Yeah. But Jacob, I really appreciate you trying to get us excited and get our viewers excited about our forests and woodlands here in Kentucky. Whether you're out in the swamps, the cypress swamps in Western Kentucky, or you're up on Black Mountain, our forests are so diverse and they have so much to offer. It is just, I truly enjoy it. I'm looking forward to this series and hearing from others as we go.
Yeah, no, it's great to be back. There was a little bit of a hiatus there, and so I'm looking forward to coming back and bringing these videos every month. So
yeah,
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
yeah. Thanks, Jacob.
All right, so moving on to our tree of the week.
I know.
Lori, if you're out there,
I told you we had a really cool tree, so it's cool as can be, right, Laurie?
Yes, it's cool as a cucumber. Oh, did I get it?
Okay, let's let everybody in on the joke.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, yeah, we're doing cucumber tree this week. It's also called cucumber magnolia. In the magnolia family, it's related to yellow poplar. And again, it's just a great tree. It has a large range, but it's not terribly abundant in any one spot. So you may have seen it and not even realized it when you're out in the woods in Eastern Kentucky. So here we have cucumber tree. I'm Laurie Thomas with the University of Kentucky Forestry and Natural Resources Extension, and I'm here with the tree of the week, the cucumber tree. Cucumber tree, Magnolia acuminata, is a stately tree of the Magnoliaceae family. This tree is known primarily for its tropical-looking foliage and unique seed cones. It is also known as cucumber magnolia. Cucumber tree is in the Magnolia genus, which numbers about 80 to 85 species that are scattered throughout the southern and eastern Asia, Mexico to Venezuela, and the eastern United States. There are 8 species of magnolia that are native to the United States, but only 2 are important timber trees. Cucumber tree grows fairly rapidly and typically lives about 80 to 120 years. Trees typically grow 80 to 90 feet tall and about 3 to 4 feet in diameter. It usually has a pyramid shape when young, but develops a clear, straight trunk with a rounded crown at maturity. Cucumber tree is widely distributed but never really abundant, from southern Ontario to southern Missouri and southeastern Oklahoma into northwest Florida. It is found primarily in eastern Kentucky. The tree grows best in rich, well-drained soils of bottomlands and on north and east-facing slopes. It prefers full sun but will tolerate partial shade, and it is classified as intermediate in shade tolerance. If using this tree in a landscape, it needs a large open space with well-drained, moist soils. The leaves are deciduous and alternately arranged on the twig, as you can see in the photo. The leaf form is simple, and the leaves are elliptical to ovate in shape and typically 6 to 10 inches long. The leaves have pinnate venation, entire margins, and an acuminate tip, which means it's shaped like an acute angle with a long attenuated point. They are dark green above and pale to whitened below. Fall leaf color is yellow, but not particularly showy. Cucumber tree is monoecious, which means the tree has both male and female flowers. The flowers are greenish yellow and sort of resemble tulips. They are 2 to 3 inches long and appear at the tips of the twigs. The flowers are fragrant and bloom from April to June and often are hidden by the foliage. They're not nearly as showy as southern magnolia or yellow poplar flowers. The flowers are pollinated by insects, particularly sap beetles. The fruit is an aggregate or compact cluster of simple fruits that resemble a small green cucumber when unripened. The fruit ripens in late August to September. When ripened, the rounded red knobby follicles open to expose reddish-orange seeds that hang on slender threads before falling to the ground. Trees begin seed production at about 30 years of age, with optimal production around 50 years. Good seed crops occur every 4 to 5 years. Each fruit typically produces between 10 to 60 seeds, and seeds are disseminated by birds, wind, water, and gravity soon after ripening. The bark is light gray-brown and flaky and relatively soft. It can be dented with your thumbnail. The wood has very wide sapwood that is creamy white to grayish in color. The heartwood is comparatively narrow, and the color ranges from medium to dark brown, sometimes with green, purple, or even black streaks. The wood is rated as non-durable to perishable regarding decay resistance. Cucumber tree wood can be difficult to distinguish from other magnolias. Additionally, magnolia species wood can be difficult to tell apart from yellow poplar, Liriodendron tulipifera wood, and typically microscopic examination is necessary to distinguish the two genera. Wildlife use of cucumber tree is overall relatively low. However, the seeds are eaten by several species of birds such as towhees and other ground-feeding birds. Small mammals and rodents also eat the seeds. Grackles and blackbirds eat the young fruit, and deer browse the twigs, leaves, and buds. Cucumber tree is a valuable forest and shade tree. The wood resembles yellow poplar, except it's heavier and harder, and it's commonly used for lumber and often sold as yellow poplar. The wood is used for many of the same products as yellow poplar, which includes furniture, Venetian blinds, siding, interior trim, crates, and specialty carved and turned items. As a landscape tree, it's desirable for large sites due to its symmetrical form and spreading branches, as well as its large tropical leaves and interesting fruits. The national champion cucumber tree as of 2021 is in Stark, Ohio, and it's 309 inches in circumference, 91 feet tall, with a 35-foot crown spread. The Kentucky champion cucumber tree as of 2021 is in Lexington at the Lexington Cemetery. It's 172 inches in circumference, 90 feet tall, with a 71-foot crown spread. If you'd like to know more about champion trees, check out American Forest Champion Trees or check out the Kentucky Division of Forestry Champion Trees. Now for a few fun facts about cucumber tree. The trunk can grow to be 5 feet thick, and the wood has been used, along with yellow poplar, as the poor man's walnut. Early settlers flavored whiskey with the bitter, immature fruit. Magnolias were among the first flowering plants to appear on Earth, and the range once included many parts of Europe, Canada, Siberia, and Greenland. The common name of cucumber tree comes from the fruit resembling cucumbers. The name magnolia is in honor of 18th century French botanist Pierre Magnol, who established the renowned Montpellier Botanical Garden. The species name acuminata refers to the pointed leaf tips. I'm glad you joined me today to learn about the cucumber tree and get the opportunity to get out into your woodland, local park, or neighborhood and enjoy this majestic magnolia.
Well, thank you, Lori. We greatly appreciate that. And it's a very pretty tree, looks like.
Yes, it is. But it's one that, because it's more timber, it looks, it reminds you a lot of yellow poplar in that way, that sometimes when you're in the woods, I can remember doing dendrology going, Now, what is that tree? Because you don't see it real often, whereas some of its other relatives, magnolias, totally stand out. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, it's a great tree, a very nice one. And it's a beautiful one over at the Lexington Cemetery, the state champion.
So
So,
we have a lot of magnolias in
well,
Kentucky.
actually, we only have 4 native
Oh,
magnolias here. So, and what I'm going to do a big leaf magnolia next week. So we have the 4 magnolias plus Lyriodendron or yellow poplar. So those are the trees in the Magnoliaceae family that we have in Kentucky.
okay.
Yeah. Now there are a lot of magnolias that are planted,
Right.
horticultural varieties and stuff, but as far as native out in our woods.
Right, that we would find in our woodlands. Exactly. Yes. So excellent.
Laurie, thank you. Love the
Thank you.
series and the very cool cucumber tree.
We are just loaded with them today, aren't we? Intrigued, the cool cucumbers.
All right.
All right. Well,
Thank
thank you very
appreciate
much, Lori. We
the effort,
appreciate it.
Emily Clark. Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah.
All right. Coming up next is
Ellen.
Dr. Ellen Crocker. Ellen, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, it's always my pleasure to come and talk with you about some pesky plants in your woods.
I know everybody's getting out in their woods now, Ellen. So it's really good timing for you to kind of highlight some of the stuff they may be seeing.
Oh, well,
I think
and
they
this
see a lot of this, right?
this is one you might see a lot of, whether it's in your woods or just in your neighborhood. I was walking around my neighborhood the other day and saw plenty. So, our pesky plants, they might start out one place and end up another. So today's pesky plant of the month is garlic mustard. So here you can see garlic mustard. It's called garlic mustard because if you crush its leaves, it has this garlicky smell. It also goes by other names like Jack by the hedge, and it's native to Europe, parts of Asia and Africa, and it was introduced to North America from Europe in the 1800s for use as a culinary plant, as an herbal plant. And since then, it's also been used in the past for erosion control. Hindsight is, of course, 2020. And now we know that that's not a good plant for that use because it will take over and really dominate and prevent other plants from establishing. So the first report of it in the US was in the 1800s in New York. And since then, it has spread all over and become quite a problem. So here's kind of a photo of what you might see it doing in the woods. It can rapidly invade and form dense stands, especially in edges, roadsides, disturbed areas, and woodlands. And it's really one of the few invasives that can colonize that dense woodland understory. It's got relatively high tolerance to shade. It's also thought to exude chemicals from its roots that inhibit the growth of other plants mediated through soil fungi. So not only is it having a negative impact because it's taking over and growing really densely and preventing other things from growing over there, but also changing things below ground as well. And one thing to note about garlic mustard is that its life cycle is 2 years. So it only lives 2 years. In its first year, it's going to be this small rosette, low to the ground. And then in its second year, that's going to shoot up into these flowers. It will produce seed and then that will die and the cycle will repeat. So that's really significant if you're thinking about management, because unlike some of the other invasive plants that you might be familiar with, like bush honeysuckle, where the root system is really key in killing that root system, with garlic mustard, it's going to repeatedly establish by seed. So if you were to kill all of these plants, but there's still lots of seed in the ground, that's going to come back year after year and just be something to consider. So what does it look like? Let's look at each of those different stages. So this is that first year, that small rosette stage. In its first year, garlic mustard leaves are rounded, maybe kind of heart-shaped or kidney-shaped, and they have this scalloped margin around the edge with these rounded edges here. In this stage, growing as a rosette on the ground level, they are really easy to miss. And identification can be pretty tricky because there's a lot of things that kind of look like this. One thing to do is to crush up those leaves and see if they smell like garlic. That can help you in that identification. And so seeds in the ground will germinate in the spring. They'll grow into these rosettes, and that will last throughout the spring of the following year, through the winter and into the spring. And then they'll shoot up into these flowering garlic mustard stalks. And the leaves kind of change at this point. They become, a different shape. They're more serrated. And it will grow much taller. While those rosettes are very small, this could grow up to maybe 3 or 4 feet tall, although they can certainly also be smaller. And then this is the flower of garlic mustard. You can see it's got these 4 white petals. Garlic mustard tends to flower in the late spring, so late April and May. And those flowers develop into these seed pods. You can see that starting to elongate there, a long calyx with seeds inside. So after that, this plant will die back, and you might see the leftovers of those seed pods, those calyx. And this is what those seeds would look like inside of it. So afterwards, once those plants have died, it does no good to pull it up because those seeds are already gone and that plant has already died. And something to think about with that is that a single plant, a single garlic mustard plant, can produce thousands of seeds. So another point to keep in mind in your management, and that if you're going to pull up garlic mustard, you really need to get all of it, because if you leave even one plant, it can produce thousands of seed that could, invade in the future. So these seeds will generally germinate in a year or two, but they can live in the seed bank for longer than that, for up to 5 years or maybe even more. So this is something that is going to take a while to get it out of the seed bank, even if you are managing it really regularly. Where is it now? Garlic mustard is widespread throughout the Northeast and in the Midwest, where it's been established for quite some time. It's also throughout Kentucky. And I think this map is underreporting it. I think it's in more places than that, but it's not as dominant here as it is in other areas. And I think that that gives us a little bit of incentive, if you see it and you see a tiny bit of it, to manage it right away rather than waiting for it to become more of a problem. So speaking of managing garlic mustard, how do we do that? As with other invasive plants, controlling garlic mustard requires patience and persistence. And by far the easiest way to manage it and control it is to prevent its arrival and establishment. So if you can catch it when there's just one little clump instead of a whole sea of garlic mustard, that's a lot easier than trying to deal with this situation where you have a lot of seed in the seed bank that's going to continue to grow and be a problem into the future. So the sooner you can catch it, the less of a hassle to be, the easier it will be to manage. So in addition, for scouting for seed that's germinating from the seed bank, if you controlled an area, be on the lookout for new things that are coming in, seed that might have come in, humans accidentally moving it around in the mud on your boots, or animals moving it around. Another common management approach is to pull it up. Garlic mustard pulls are really popular early spring events in many public areas. And here you can see some photos of that. But thinking back to garlic mustard's biology, I really want to emphasize that you should only do this if you're going to be getting all of the flowering heads. And by all, I mean over 95% of those flowering heads, because if you don't, every little microsite disturbance that you create when you pull up that root system is a perfect place for those seeds to grow and germinate in the future. So you could actually be having a negative impact if you're not pulling up all of it. So I think that's kind of counterintuitive, but it's something worth noting when you think about your time and energy. You want to make sure that it's actually having a positive impact. A few other tips for pulling up garlic mustard. You want to pull up the plants before they seed. Once they have seed on them, and if you're pulling them up, you can easily spread seed around that way. It's easiest to pull them up when the soil is moist after a rain, because you really want to get all of that taproot. If you leave some in the ground, it could potentially send up one other shoot that might be shorter, but still flowering and produce seeds. And then once you have pulled up the plants, make sure you do like these people in these photos and bag them up and take them out. If you just leave them on the ground, they will surprisingly continue to develop into seed. So just a few tips for that. And then for kind of larger infestations, you can also use herbicides and chemical control for garlic mustard. especially if they're in areas where hand pulling is not going to be effective. But you do want to keep in mind that you don't want to damage some other plants that are nearby. While people will commonly use glyphosate-based herbicides to those rosettes, doing this in the early spring, for example, might give you a time window when that garlic mustard is active, but other plants aren't. So you're likely to minimize your non-target damage to other things. And just like with pulling up garlic mustard, herbicide is something that's going to have to be repeated year after year as you exhaust that seed bank, because that's really what it's all about with garlic mustard management. So whether you're dealing with garlic mustard or other invasive species, there are lots of great resources for you online to help with identification and management. For example, the Forest Service has several free books that you can find dealing with that topic. And then thanks for joining us today. And if you have any other questions, make sure to check us out at KY Forest Help on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, as well as our website.
Well, thank you, Ellen. We greatly appreciate you doing that for us. And that is a pesky plant. And so if someone does absolutely nothing, will it just go away over time?
Well, that's a
Just get
really good
worse?
question. And there has been a lot of research on that. And there is some research from out of New York, where garlic mustard has been established for a lot longer than it has here, that suggests that over time, and long periods of time, not over a few years, over decades, when garlic mustard is in the same site, it will do more poorly. So it will perform more poorly over time. So maybe long term, there's something about its interactions with the soil microbial communities that's going to help keep it in check over time. Is the same thing happening in our area? And will it be enough to help you in garlic mustard? I would say, if you don't have garlic mustard in your woods right now, why risk it? If you see a few, shoots of garlic mustard, pull them out and don't let it reproduce. But I do think it gives us some hope for the future that maybe over time, these invasive plants will accumulate and acquire pathogens and insects and different things that will keep them under control.
And I noticed you mentioned it had culinary uses, and we got a question about, can it be eaten?
Definitely. You can make garlic mustard pesto in the spring with those new shoots. Now, you do want to make sure that this garlic mustard is growing in an area where it's not going to be absorbing any contaminants from the soil or anything that you wouldn't want to be eating. But people have eaten it for many, many years.
Have you tried it?
I have. It's quite good. It tastes like, if you make pesto with it, it tastes like pesto.
Does it have a garlic flavor as well?
It does. Yeah.
That's interesting. That's interesting. So
Ellen,
we also had a comment that the leaves look different from year to year.
Yeah, and they look really different when they're on that rosette, that small rosette, versus that shoot that springs up from it, which is why I wanted to highlight that, because it looks really different in each one of those stages. When it shoots up and is flowering, it's very easy to pick out. There's not a whole lot that looks like it. And usually it's in abundance. But when it's a rosette, you can easily confuse it for lots of different things, from violets and creeping Charlie and others. Wild ginger, a lot of things kind of have that look. But once you get an eye for it, it becomes a little bit easier. The veination pattern, it's not as glossy as some other things. So it can take some time, but also you can crush up those leaves and smell them and see if they smell garlicky.
And I saw some of those. How tall is that? I was trying to figure it out from the picture. How tall is that second year?
When they're flowering, they can get quite tall. They could get up to 3 or 4 feet tall, but they can also be shorter. And I think that's something that can trip people up too, in that they're pulling garlic mustard and they're doing a garlic mustard pull, and most of them they've gotten, but they might have missed some that are maybe just some stragglers that are a little shorter. So it can be variable in terms of how tall it is.
Ellen, you made some really great points in that segment. One, I love that picture where you showed one plant and then a sea of plants, right?
You don't
That
want that
early,
sea.
yeah, that early detection is so critical in all of our invasive plants. But I did want to ask, and you may have mentioned it, and if I missed it, I'm sorry, but how long is the viability of that seed bank? And I know it can vary probably, but do we have some kind of rules of thumb about how long those seeds will last in the soil?
Yeah, so most of those seeds are going to germinate within a year or two, but they can survive for much longer than that, for 5 years or potentially even more. But I think within those first few years is when you're going to get most of that seed germinating in the soil. And then after, just following up, because not only could you get it reestablishing from that seed bank, seed that's been in that soil and has just decided to wait and now it's going to germinate. You can also get the arrival of new seeds from different places. So garlic mustard is one of those that you're going to want to watch, especially if you're really devoting a lot of time to eradicating it, making sure you come back the next year and the next year, because just doing it 1 year isn't going to do anything about the seed bank that's already there.
Oh, I think that's such a great point. And, and you brought up such a really good point too about pulling up those plants creates the perfect environment for germination of other ones. So,
oh yeah, definitely. And everyone feels really good with those garlic mustard pulls, and they're fun. And
yeah.
it's kind of like, this
we did
hunt,
it.
scavenger hunt in the woods, and it's fun. But you also want to make sure that there's a net benefit there. If you're just creating lots of disturbances,
Yeah.
garlic mustard loves disturbances,
Yeah.
and so do a lot of other invasive plants.
Yeah, so you're looking probably at a minimum of a 3-year kind of repeated thing in those spots. So if you decide to do a pull, just plan on doing it again for the next couple of years. So,
Definitely.
yeah.
So, getting these invasive species out of our woodlands is a good thing, but how do you keep up with all of it? If you have several acres, what do you suggest to do, Ellen? Just go scouting your woods all the time with a book?
Well, definitely. Who doesn't want to do that?
Yeah.
But I think that's a really good point, is that especially if you have a lot of area or it's very infested, you might want to prioritize, which areas are you really going to focus on and do a lot of management on, and keep that small and manageable. Because if you try to do everything everywhere, and you just do a little bit everywhere, you're not going to see the results that you want. Last year, when we talked about garlic mustard, we had a woodland owner on with us, Hannah Helm, who each spring hired a team of people with her neighbors to walk their land and pull all of their garlic mustard. And that's just one of the many invasives that woodland owners have to deal with in our area. There's garlic mustard, there's the bush honeysuckle, there's the winter creeper. Unfortunately, they don't go one at a time. Sometimes they can go all together. And I recommend folks, prioritize areas based on their resources, what they can manage. And then also think about the impact that those invasives are having. If this is, we talked about garlic mustard, reducing the biodiversity of the wildflowers that somebody's seeing. If that's a really high priority to them, that's going to be a major focus, versus something else that might really impact timber and regeneration. They might want to prioritize some different things based on how their woods look, what's going on there that could impact them in the future.
That's another great point. Really all of our management activities are driven by our objectives, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do we care about most, and what are we trying to achieve? So really good points, Ellen. Thank you so much.
We're never going to get rid of our invasives completely. So we're going to, hopefully find a better balance with them in the long term with our native species. But in the interim, I think it's about thinking about our objectives. What do you want, and how are these invasives interfering with those? Are they not giving you the diversity of plants that you want to see? Are they inhibiting the wildlife that you want? Are they, messing up the regeneration you need for the timber long term? So I think all of those are really good points, Billy.
Yeah.
So one thing I was wondering, Ellen, you started mentioning about invasives in general. And so is there a overall blanket for what you should do to remove invasives, or is each invasive kind of different, and you need to look up what's the best, because you may just end up making it mad and it getting bigger.
I think that's a good point. Each one is different. There are some kind of common trends in terms of if you're dealing with shrubs, like woody shrubs, or if you're dealing with, things like garlic mustard that are establishing from the seed bank readily. But for each one, it can be a little different. Some respond really well to some herbicides and not others. Their life cycle is very important. And so I think identifying and studying up on particular invasives is really handy if you're trying to manage them.
And Billy, I don't know if you or Jacob want to answer this, but as far as woodland owners go and having to deal with invasives, where can they get help, or what can they do? Because I mean, if you have 300 acres or more, I mean, I'm sure that could be very overwhelming if you have a lot of invasives.
Certainly, there are a number of programs that are available to help landowners deal with these. I think Ellen's point of early identification or detection is critical, right? If you can keep that from becoming a big problem. So again, back to scouting the woods when you can. But Natural Resources Conservation Service offices, they have a program called EQIP, and that stands for Environmental Quality Incentives Program. And there's some money to do some of these invasive control practices. There's also maybe some cost share programs available through your local conservation district. And there is a state cost share program as well. And you can find out information about that one as well as the local programs through your local conservation district. So just check on them. They have rolling different dates, when you apply and stuff for that. But, working with a professional forester, especially if you've got a big situation, they can really provide some, really customized advice to your situation, right? And what you're trying to accomplish, and reach out to those resources that Ellen shared with us too. Knowing what you're dealing with is going to be the first step before you can really treat it.
And two, if you're working with one of those people, they would know for sure that yes, that is garlic mustard, as opposed to, well, no, that's maybe not it. Whereas you might not know for sure what it is.
Yeah, I guess a good rule of thumb, if you see something that's new that you've not seen before, you might want to check it out, because there might be a pretty good chance it is invasive.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Ellen. We greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, a really awesome series. Yeah, it's really
wonderful. Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, all right, thanks. Well, Renee, really some good topics. We covered the start of the InTreegued series with Jacob, and I know maybe a few of you might have had a little video issues with that, but you can check out the recording. Again, all of these shows are available. The recordings are available, so you can check that out. And then a really cool cucumber tree, and then our pesky plant. So yeah, very good episode. We really appreciate you all being with us.
Definitely. We wouldn't do this show if you weren't with us. And so we greatly appreciate everyone who joins in every week with us on Wednesdays at 11 o'clock. And just a reminder, like Billy said, you can go to fromthewoodstoday.com, and every episode that we've ever had is there. I know sometimes, I've had people that have called or emailed and said, what did she say, or what did he say? And so it's just easy. You can find every episode there. And you just have to scroll on the bottom. We have only posted 3, but if you scroll, and you can see that there's, I don't know how many we've got now, over 50, I know. Yeah. So there's a lot of tree IDs there, and pretty much any topic that if it covers the forest. And speaking of that, people can also ask us about topics if they want.
Yeah, there's a little survey there at fromthewoodstoday.com that you can submit, things you want us to see, or maybe you've got some interesting pictures or things that you've seen in your woods, and maybe you're not sure about what's going on with that. Let us know. Complete that survey, and we'll try to address it in a future show.
I know one time we got a photo of a snake, and Matt did it on a snake one time. So, because of the show, we got that in, and he did a snake ID. So you just never know what we'll use your photos for.
No. Thank you all so much for being with us, and keep coming back, and please let others know about it. We think there's a lot of people that appreciate it and enjoy the show, and help us spread the word.
All right. Until then, we'll see you next Wednesday at 11. Take care.
Bye, everyone.